This message has no affiliation with the Department of War. Good evening, everyone. Stay with us today as we break down the government shutdown, who is at fault, and what it does to our service members and families. This is the Martin Memo. The Martin Memo. All right, folks, we are now day 9 into Washington holding America hostage. Over 1 million federal workers are in limbo, our economy is bleeding, and our military families are feeling the squeeze. This isn't bipartisan gridlock, it's Democrats' addition to reckless spending versus President Trump and House Republicans fighting for fiscal sanity. And we're going to break it down. So first of all, we have to understand what a shutdown is. The stats behind it, the 2025 mess, a special focus on our military heroes, and why conservatives need to stand firm. So please hit subscribe, share with every freedom lover you know, and let's dive in. So let's get down to the brass tacks of things. A government shutdown happens when Congress fails to pass funding bills by a fiscal year deadline. The end of the fiscal year is September 30th, so a new fiscal year begins on October 1st. It's not typically when you typically have your new year or anything like that. It is done a few months before, so that way no one gets lost in the craziness of all the end of year festivities. So with that being said, the federal budget is a monstrous $7 trillion, which needs 12 appropriation bills to keep the lights on. Non-essential services do stop. About 2 million federal workers are split. 900,000 furloughed are sent home with no pay, and 700,000 accepted workers keep going but wait for their back pay. And that is thanks to the 2019 Government Employee Fair Treatment Act, a Trump-era win. Essential stuff like Social Security, air traffic control, and our military stays funded, but the rest, nothing. National parks, federal loans, IRS, audits, all of that gone, gone, gone. So, shutdowns expose a bloated system. Why are we funding foreign aid or woke programs when we can't even pay our own people? This is what happens when Democrats refuse to cut the fat and prioritize Americans. That is why it is taking so long to this point. So, don't let the media spin this as Trump chaos and, the Republicans are all at fault for the shutdown. No, that's not the case at all. In fact, shutdowns have occurred for a long time now. There have been 20 funding gaps since 1976, with 10 major ones. You go back into the 1990s, there was a shutdown under Bill Clinton. You can go back into Obama when there was a 2013 shutdown with 16 days, and that was a fight over Obamacare. And then the record, which is under the Trump administration, the first term from 2018 to 2019, which was a record of 35 days, which ended up fighting for border wall funds. So what was the cost? It was brutal. The 2018-2019 shutdown drained $11 billion in economic output per the Congressional Budget Office. Each day, they estimate we bleed about $300 million in GDP. Small businesses lose $1 billion in weekly contracts, and here's the kicker. 78% of shutdown days since 1976 have happened under Democrat presidents or Senate control. This is their playbook. Spend, stall, and blame conservatives. Are we really surprised here? So now we're going to go into why, what sparked it, why are we having this 2025 shutdown? So why are we here on October 9th, 2025? It started with a March continuing resolution, a temporary patch to avoid the very mess, but by September 30th, talks collapsed. The fight, Trump's $9 billion foreign aid cuts, expiring Obamacare subsidies, and demands for security funds after the Charlie Kirk incident. Now, then we flash forward to September 16th. House Speaker Mike Johnson pushes a clean CR, no extras, just funding, passes with 219 to 210. Senate Democrats kill it with a filibuster. So what is their plan? It is loaded with health care handouts, and this fails 47 to 45. Now we flash forward to September 29th. Trump hosts a summit. Schumer and Jeffries, of course, they stonewall. That's what they're best at. And then on September 30th, the dual Senate votes, and it ends up flopping. So we had 3 Democrats that ended up joining the conservatives, and it ended up being 56 to 44. And October 1st, the government shutdown begins. So where does that leave us? Now we're at day 9 with $2.7 billion lost in productivity, national parks costing tourism $100 million weekly, and the Dow's down 2%. So what is the conservative take on this? Democrats are shielding illegals, healthcare, and pork, while Trump's DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, for those who don't know, fights waste. They are playing politics, and we are paying the price. This is not what America voted for. Let's make that very clear. We had a mandate, the conservatives had a mandate, and this is not what America voted for. And here we go again. The Democrats are not getting their way, so now we're going to just play these political games, and it's going to go nowhere. And all it is doing is hurting the average American citizen. So now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next portion, and that's the military impact. As someone who is serving in the military, and my sister's about to join the military, this hits very deep. The good news first, all 1.3 million active duty troops, Army, Navy, Air Force, Space Force, Marines, Coast Guard, they stay on duty and they end up getting paid later. Thanks to the 2019 law, as mentioned before, a big Trump era win again. Missions in the Pacific or Middle East, they're untouched, funded by prior budgets. So now what's the bad news? Of the Department of Defense's 741,000 civilians, 45%, that's about 335,000, are furloughed. What does this do to the military family? Well, commissaries may close. This is cutting off affordable groceries. Childcare on base may be stalled, hurting these people. TRICARE claims that you put in, they might be delayed, leaving veterans waiting. In 2019, 40,000 DoD civilians lost $200 million in wages. Now, 25% of military families report severe stress per military family advisory polls. Training halts, recruitment dips, and morale takes a hit. We are experiencing all this on the base. This is just a reality. Everyone's a little bit stressed. I know several of my friends are contacting their local banks. Some of them are getting denied for potential future funds if this government shutdown continues. This is a big stress on all of us, and if you don't have a good savings, this is going to hurt you pretty badly. So, this ends up hurting our heroes even more, and they deserve better. The pain is not just military. So as much as I bring up how this is affecting the military families, it goes further than that. There are 900,000 furloughed employees throughout the entire U.S. government. Just to give you a size comparison, that's more than the population of Miami in itself. So there are a lot of families that are being affected by this. And I just want to say it's all to prove a point that the Democrats, they just will block anything that Trump does. I know that recently there was an article that came out on how Tylenol may or may not be bad for you if you are pregnant. Regardless of what you believe, the fact that people were going out taking excessive amounts of Tylenol just to stick it to the government is just absolutely ridiculous. In fact, a lot of these people are now in the hospital. We don't know necessarily if they're going to make it or not, and it's just very sad that no matter what he does, people will go against it. I use this old analogy with some of my friends. If he said that horse poop was bad for you, that they'd probably start eating horse poop every day just to prove a point. They'd probably say it's loaded in fiber, just despite him. It's very sad to see. Now, before we wrap this up and put a nice little pretty bow on it, I have a solution that I believe would work. It's an extremely hot take, but it would work. How about the Congress, men and women, they don't get paid until they can solve this government shutdown? I think that's fair because while American families are still struggling, they are still collecting a paycheck. That is unacceptable. And I believe that maybe we can put some sort of resolution in there that they cannot get paid until they solve the government shutdown. I rest my case. All right, so that brings us to my favorite segment, and that is the cold monologue. So for those of you who do not know what the cold monologue is, you ask us questions throughout the week. My editor writes it down on little pieces of paper. We put it in a hat, shake it around, and I pick one, and you get my authentic reaction. There's no cuts. There's no nothing. You get a pure, absolute response from me. So without further ado, let's dive into it. Mix it up. No cheating. By the way, just in case it wasn't made clear, I have no idea what is on these pieces of paper. What are your thoughts on the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth? Oh, I am glad someone asked this question. Personally, I really like Pete Hegseth, and I know that in the military community, there's a lot of misinformation that has been spread, and I'd like to take this time to talk about it. So I like Pete Hegseth. People think that he was supposed to be a like another type of general like the last one, Secretary Lloyd Austin. No, he is a reformer. That is why President Trump put him in the position that he is. He is not there to hold hands, kiss babies. No, he's not doing that. He is getting after it. He's understanding what a warfighter is, being someone who actually served in combat, and he is getting after the little nuances and making the military great again, if you will. So the biggest rumors that I do want to address is the whole shaving profile. If you haven't read it recently, there was some soldiers that were complaining because allegedly he was going to end all of the shaving profiles. That's not true. If you're in the military, you understand that the shaving profile was absolutely abused. Every day you would see new people identifying as Norse pagans, so that way they could get a shaving exemption, or identifying as Muslim, or different things like that. And I'd try to go have conversations, and many people in the military try to have conversations, and they have no idea what the whole Norse pagan or Muslim religion is. They were just using it to get a shaving waiver. On top of that, people were they were abusing the entire system. So I know personally, I have curly hair, I get razor bumps, I don't have a shaving profile, probably need to get one. But what a lot of people would do is they would dry shave so their neck would look really irritated, so that way they didn't have to shave. And additionally, you're only supposed to have your beard within an eighth to a quarter of an inch. People would have their beard all the way grown out to like an inch. So that's not the right answer. So that is something that I do agree getting rid of. Additionally, I am very glad that they are tackling the whole issue of like equality in the military. I do not think we should have two separate standards for men and women. If you are serving within the military, there should be one set standard. You are a warfighter. You are on the front lines. You are doing whatever the military requires you to. There should not be a lesser standard to help a certain demographic get into the military or retain in the military. That is not the right answer. Additionally, something that I really liked was the other day he called some of the top officials within the entire military into a little seminar. He basically called them out and saying, we're done with all this DEI crap. We're done with it. We're getting rid of it. We don't need that. And then he also made all those top people, all these top generals, sergeant majors, admirals, whatever, he made them all do a PT test. And shocking to say, I mean, it's really not shocking if you're in the military, but a lot of these people didn't pass. So it's just, it just goes to show you that the people that want to enforce the standard don't meet the standard. And that's, I think, something that he is trying to reform, is if you're going to serve in the United States military, you need to uphold the standard regardless if you are a PV2, the lowest private, or you're a 4-star general. You need to be across the board able to serve in the military and serve effectively. It doesn't matter if you've been in for 30 years or if you've been in for 6 minutes. You need to meet the standard, and that is why I appreciate Pete Hegseth. And there's a lot more. I'll be sure to go into another podcast episode on that one alone, but that is how I feel, and I don't think he receives enough credit for what he is doing within the U.S. military. Well, folks, that's all we have in store for today. Join us on Tuesday as we talk about one of the most heated topics in America, and that is abortion. Share your thoughts on X. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at The Martin Memo, and subscribe on YouTube. Now, in case I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night. This is The Martin Memo. The Martin Memo.